Fantastic. So welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for sharing where you're from. We've got some people from all over the world, which is fantastic. Professional services firms, regardless of whether they are legal, accountancy, property, big four, small, all have something in common. And that is that they need to respond increasingly to increasingly complex client challenges. They need to innovate fast because of the complexity of the changing world that we're in. And the other commonality with all professional services firms is the professionals themselves. Those professionals provide a service. And often those professionals have many years of experience and are used to doing things in a certain way. There's a Chinese proverb which says that the best time to plant trees is 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. And what that proverb says is that for success and growth in the future, the best time to do something is now. And that really is what I want to have underpinning the session today. And the reason why I want to talk about design thinking is because for me, it is the creative driver that professional services firms need to face some of those challenges that I've just mentioned. I'm Claire Rayson, I'm the founder of Client Talk, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Natalie Murray and Stefania Passera, and I'm going to be introducing them both to you a bit later on. And they are both going to be speaking a bit about design thinking in the particular context of legal. But I know on the line we have lots of representatives from the legal sector, but we have other sectors as well. And for those in the legal sector, I think the legal design aspects will be interesting. For those from other sectors, what we want to do is we want to reflect a little bit and think about how that case study perhaps could be pulled across and used for different types of professional services firms. I also know that there are lots of people in the audience who know a lot about legal design and know a lot about design thinking. And equally, there are some people in the audience that perhaps don't have that same level of knowledge. So with all of the sessions that I do, I like to learn as much from the audience as hopefully I give to the audience. So please do use the chat. If you've got thoughts, reflections as we're going through, please do keep jotting those in there. Between us, we'll be monitoring the chat. We can pick that up when we're talking. So do please make use of that as we go through. And there'll be lots of opportunities to speak once we've finished our presentation. So we're going to have a Q&A session. So please do share with us your thoughts, reflections as we go through. So the questions that I want to explore today are, is design thinking just a gimmick? I think design thinking is something that, often pops up and, is it a buzzword? Is it a gimmick? We'll have a think about that as we go through the session today. Why are so many people taken by it? That's the other thing I want to explore. The sign up for today, we had over 100 people sign up. It's something that I think captures imaginations. So why is it? And what's the benefit that people are seeing? And how can we make more of that? And what can professional services firms learn by adopting it? So as I said, there are commonalities around the challenges that professional services firms face. And what is it about design thinking that might provide the answer and the solution? So what I want to do now, before I turn to Natalie and to Stefania, is have a think about what design thinking is. And I've put up a quote there, and it's from IDEO, which is a great resource for people who want to delve a bit more into design thinking and to think about what it is. I won't read the quote out, it's there, you can have a look. But one of the things that they say is that thinking like a designer can transform the way that organizations develop products, services, so professional services firms obviously focusing on services, processes and strategy. And they go on to say that design thinking brings together what's desirable from a human point of view, with what is I've struggled over this word every single time I try to read it out, technologically feasible, and also economically viable. And those three things are what they see as very much being at the heart of what design thinking is. They also go on to say, and I think this is interesting, that it allows people who aren't trained as designers. Stefania, we're very lucky to have here because she is trained as a designer, so will be able to give us some interesting insights. But it allows those who aren't trained as designers to use creative tools to address a vast range of challenges. And I'm going to be doing a really quick exercise to demonstrate how you might do that today. So what is it? I have stolen Lawbox's image here, so hopefully I'm not stealing Natalie's thunder, but what you will often see when you look at design thinking is kind of these elements, and they're often put forward in this order, but they're not linear. So sometimes, you know, particularly, you know, you might be at the prototype stage and that might force you to go back earlier on. So whilst I'm going to talk through the stages as they are here, they are by no means linear. And I'm going to give a really high level introduction into what design thinking is, but I'm sure that Natalie and Stefania know this much better than I do and can go into it in a bit more detail in the Q&A stage if anyone's got any questions. So the starting point is empathy. And for those who know me, for those that have been on sessions with me before, they will know that I speak a lot about empathy. And it's very much about empathizing with the user. So in the context of legal design, which we'll be going on to, that might be the people that need to read the contracts that we're designing. But it's about listening, which again, for those of you that have been on sessions with me before will know that it's something that's quite close to my heart. And it's about trying to understand where the different users are coming from. The next stage is define. Can I just ask if you've not got yourself on mute, could you just pop yourselves on mute? There's a little bit of feedback. So just if you're not on mute, I can just ask you to pop yourselves on mute. So the define stage, and again, Natalie might go into this in a bit more detail when thinking about legal design as an example of this. But it's thinking about what is the person actually trying to achieve. So what's not being said is about not assuming. So once you've empathized, you've thought about the stakeholders, you've tried to define the problem. The next piece of the puzzle is ideation. And this is where I want to try and bring you all in to demonstrate. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick something up on your desk. So I have 4 children. So unsurprisingly, the thing on my desk that I have picked up is a toy that they were playing with. And what I want you to do when you've got your object, it could be a cup, it could be a pen, it could be whatever it is that you happen to have on your desk. I want you to jot down on a piece of paper 5 characteristics about the thing that you've picked up. So for me, I could say colourful, I could say hard, I could say broken, it's missing a piece. So just a couple of minutes to jot down 5 characteristics of the thing that you pick up on your desk. And what I also want you to do, so we've spoken a lot about challenges and how design thinking helps to overcome challenges and helps firms, those that use it, to think about things in a different way. So what I want you to do, as well as 5 characteristics of the object that you've chosen, I would like you to write down a challenge that your firm has. So it might be perhaps getting to know your clients a bit better. It might be trying to win a new piece of work, but a challenge that your firm has. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on with the presentation. We're going to come back to this. So if you've not quite finished, feel free to carry on and jot it down, and we're going to come back to it. But ideation is all about brainstorming, and it's where diverse thinking is really encouraged, collaboration is encouraged, and it's about getting creative. And I'm, as I said, going to get you creative with those things that you've been jotting down in a short while. Prototyping, again, I think is a word that non-designers have heard of, but it's about keeping it simple. It's about failing fast. It's about learning. And again, for me, this is something that, you know, really captures my imagination, particularly when we think about professional services firms. Professionals tend to be, I've already mentioned this already, experts who perhaps are afraid of failure, who perhaps rather than prototyping and doing a rough draft or anything from, you know, as far removed from that as possible. But prototyping is really about kind of the you know, getting it up and running and seeing whether it's ticked the brief or not. And that ties into testing. So what works, what doesn't work. Great, I can see we've got innovators here. So as I said, we've got such a range of knowledge here. So do feel free. I know there are people in the audience with more knowledge than me probably, and there are some people with different levels of knowledge. So feel free if you've got ideas or thoughts to throw those in. And testing. So what works, what doesn't, what can we learn? And I've said already, it's not linear. So why am I talking about design thinking? So one of my go-to places when I want to kind of get some insights is the Harvard Business Review. I love it. And there was an article that was published, and I will send the link to people after the session today, from 2018, which spoke about design thinking. And I think the article itself was called Why Design Thinking Works. And I've jotted down on this slide some of the things that came through in that article as to why design thinking works. And again, I will share the slides, I'm not going to read through, but I think if you look through that list, a lot of those things are things that we talk about in the context of professional services firms. And if you look down that list and you think, actually, is there something that does all of that? Fantastic, I want to know more. And that's hopefully where we're going to get to today. And I'm going to whet your appetite for design thinking. Client talk has 3 pillars, and they underpin everything we do. And those 3 things are active listening, diverse thinking, and empathy. And those 3 things, so active listening, diverse thinking, and empathy, come through in the range of things that we do. So coaching, training, and consulting. And actually, when I was doing this slide deck and reflecting on design thinking, I realized that actually those 3 things really sit behind design thinking as well. And perhaps that's why I'm so taken by it, and that, you know, perhaps is why I'm passionate about it. So I'm going to end with the advantages that I see, and I'm then going to hand over to Natalie. And the advantages that I see from design thinking are that it makes us put the clients first, which, you know, I think all advisors will say that they do, but I think this process and this way of thinking really does that in a clever way. It gives us permission to fail, which again, I think is really important for professional services firms who are perhaps trained in not failing and trained in getting things right. I myself, by background, I'm a lawyer, and that ability to fail, I think, is something that is really important, particularly when we're thinking about innovation. And the other thing that I really like about design thinking, and the other advantage that I can see from it, is that it provides a framework. So it's something that firms can pick up and think about applying to their challenges. And I think the advantage of having a framework, and I know there are fellow coaches online, and we use lots of tools and techniques to be able to get people to think, to see, to explore things in different ways. And I've seen design thinking applied to coaching too. And that ability to have a framework can really help enable people to move outside of their comfort zones. And that, for me, again, is one of the advantages that I see for professional services firms using this. So what I want to do now is I want to bring Natalie in, and Natalie is the person who I credit with starting me on my design thinking journey. She is the founder of Lawbox Design, which is a legal design company. Natalie works with firms, delivers legal design, but she also trains in-house teams in legal design. And I'm going to hand over to Natalie now to give a bit more background.
Thank you, Claire. Hi, everybody. Great to see so many people on this call. Yeah, so I'm going to give a kind of overview on legal design. So Claire, I think, has given us some background on what design thinking is generally, and I think there's some overlap with what we're going to say. So I'll skate over some of the stuff that you will have already heard. But what I like about what we do here is actually, you know, I'm still on a journey with design. I'm still on a journey with legal design for sure. And bringing a group of you guys together to, you know, to collaborate, to talk about all of this gives us new ideas and helps us all in our journey. So there's kind of no right or wrong with this stuff. You know, it's nice to share. It's nice to talk war stories, and hopefully out of today, that's what you'll get. As I say, I'm going to talk a bit about legal design itself, and then I think Stefania later is going to go into some more detail about how we work on contract design. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a really nice feel for what we can do. So what is legal design, and what are the benefits? It's going to be high level because we haven't got long to talk, but I think, if Claire, if you can go to the next slide, what I'm keen to do here is just have a quick recap on what design itself is. So you'll see I've crossed off legal for now. Let's just talk design. And I think I read in one of my first books I read about this is that, you know, you have an image of a designer. So they're sharply dressed. I think they've got like a really cool edgy pair of glasses, typed fast on a really cool laptop, and basically have a nice setup. You know, they make things look really nice with nice fonts, smart graphics, all of that. Designers are pretty cool, certainly from my perspective. So when I first started reading this, imagining myself as I have been in the legal industry for a while, I did think, how in the world is this going to apply to legal services? You know, the reality of legal is that it is not an episode of Suits. You know, it's something very different. So how do we apply it? Do we just need trendier offices, you know, nicely coloured contracts? Maybe we, I don't know, deliver summonses or documents via an app. You know, not taken away from my own presentation, but surely the question there is, like, anyone can throw information into a snazzy PowerPoint, you know, job done, right? Next slide, please, Claire. Legal design is much more than choosing a cool font. You know, we joke about this stuff, but it's a mindset. It's a culture and it's a way of life in how you deliver your work. It's about taking all that design thinking and applying it to the legal industry. So design thinking, it's about putting people first. If that, you know, at the heart of it, that's what it is. Put your clients first and really think about their problems. So designers themselves take advantage of research. They make the user experience much more engaging. They basically identify people's needs and they create solutions. So what they do is they ask lots of questions. You know, how might we make people's lives easier and more enjoyable? How might we add value to our day-to-day or someone's day-to-day living? And I guess design thinking is all about how we might do things better. And that itself is what we need to apply to our thinking as lawyers. Next slide, please, Claire. So let's compare the lawyer and the designer mindset. In a law firm, you know, clients contact us lawyers to solve their legal issues. Traditionally, we use our own expertise, the knowledge that we have already gained to resolve the problem. If we've been around for a while, which, you know, I've been practicing law for more years than I think I care to remember, we have seen the problem before. And so we know the answer. Fine, you know, that's good. So we think. Trainee lawyers themselves benefit from the experience of senior lawyers, who again, they already know a bunch of the answers because they've seen it before. And even in those initial meetings, we and clients expect us to provide a reasonable solution, or at least the first steps to that solution by the end of the meeting. Fine, we know this stuff, but compare this to designers. Designers first, they aim to understand what the client needs. They have no answers at this stage. They then get to the point where they research all aspects of the problem. So they'll do things like setup, you know, like I really enjoy these things like hackathons or design jams, and they brainstorm ideas. They then begin to solve the issue, trying out different possibilities. They take on feedback, they adapt, they improve things. But one crucial difference between the two is that designers just don't work alone ordinarily. They collaborate across the board with other disciplines. and they work together with those disciplines, profiting from that expertise that they don't have, and learning on and adding to their own expertise and different perspectives. And so this is all for the benefit of the client. So, from a designer's perspective, that's at the core of what they're trying to do. Again, it's still with legal, but just from a different perspective. Next slide, please, Claire. So how do we apply this to law in reality? So we need to start solving problems by focusing on empathy with the client. This is what Claire had raised before in one of her slides. Defining and solving real challenges, and testing and continually improving outcomes. Essentially, it's bringing an approach to law that's creative, it's collaborative, and doesn't aim at perfection first time. Claire said it before, it's crazy, but it actually works. When we do this, when we practice this, it becomes a valued part of people's lives, even with legals. And for my part, this is, it's exciting, and it's something I really want to bring to the law. Next slide, please, Claire. So what's a good example of legal design? So one obvious way that we all, I think we all know about, and we've all seen coming out of legal design, is where legal designers can improve legal services by turning legal documents into something people can read. Now, I'm going to focus on the middle picture here. Our very own Stefano, who will speak just after me, and Juro collaborated to create a really nice, easy to read privacy policy. And certainly from my part, it's probably, apart from having to draft them, as a user, it's one of the only privacy policies I've really enjoyed reading. So, great job there. But there are loads of ways. So we can apply design to the world of law by creating and communicating information that's a way that's functional, that's aesthetically pleasing. It might involve implementing a whole new service or product, such as a digital interface for people to navigate legals through. Or it just might be a way to innovate carrying out processes within an organisation, helping people to collaborate more effectively and efficiently. It could be anything, and I think that's the point. And to bridge the gap between lawyers and the people affected by laws, legal design just simplifies the whole process and allows you to communicate difficult concepts in a way. So it's valuable to everybody. For the lawyers themselves, now what do we get out of it? This, it's additional work, it's more time. We have to remember in the background somewhere that we may be billing by the hour. So how do we justify this stuff? But I don't think we're left out either. Lawyers benefit from doing things in new ways. We learn from other people, from collaborating with others. It's about making life better for us. So the more we streamline these tasks, our legal tasks, the more we knowledge share, the more we gain information from our clients in a really nice, user-friendly way, so they tell us everything that we need to know, means that we've got more time to lawyer well and more efficiently. So I think, for lawyers themselves, I see big things in legal design for our own growth. Next slide, please, Claire. So why is it needed now? Like, why are we even talking about this now? So the world is busy. Businesses themselves, and we've all seen it, need to make decisions faster than ever before. Traditional old style contract templates that involve months of back and forth negotiations just won't cut it anymore. In-house teams, they get quite frustrated. They want to deal with legal, but they also don't. We are seen as a blocker to them doing good things. So we need to do something about that. And what we're seeing is other industries are already doing this and have been doing it for years and have been successful at doing it. So the time is now for legal to really stand up and pay attention. Next slide, please, Claire. So where do we begin? I think that most of us are aware that things are changing. Clients certainly are, and they're expecting more value, and they want a better relationship with their lawyers. But it's really tricky to just start. Like, it doesn't just happen. We don't press a button and all of a sudden our contracts look nice. And let's be clear on that is not legal design, making something look better. It's about the whole process. So what I've got here in front of you is a design ladder. And I'd say there's 4 levels of design within the ladder. So there's non-design, there's designer's styling, designer's process, and designer's innovation. I would say probably on the whole, most of our legal documents fit into the first category, which is no design. Graphic design is probably the first step, with user-centric innovation by design the goal. That's the ultimate goal. And what we've got to do is change our mindset. So we go from just, good looking documents to actually getting the crux of what clients want and what their end user wants. The real key here is to start each project as if it were a clean slate with no preconceived ideas of solutions. Now that's tough. I set out the 2 scenarios earlier. I know that when I prep for a client meeting, I've solved what I think is their problem before I even join. And as I say, this is a journey for me as well. And I'm trying to change that. I think more importantly is an open mind to novelty. Don't predefine a solution or a format from the outset. Try different things, ideas generated through the design process that we can adapt in the way that we practice our legals. It's definitely uncomfortable. We're taught to seek tested, bulletproof solutions from the outset. Law school did a good job for that, on that for us. We got some good training, but avoiding predefinition and end results is actually the key to designing a solution that will resonate with users. That's where we've got to get to. Next slide, please, Claire. So what does it actually look like? So every project will be different. There's not really a legal design template as such. We could look at redesigned contracts that users will want to read, going back to the privacy policy that I pointed out earlier. That's a good example. A code of conduct that business people will actually want to apply. So they'll read it and they'll be excited by it and they'll practice it. A lean and user-friendly legal process to maybe automate high volume contracts. Engaging in that process enables client companies to gather valuable feedback. So it's not about the product, the end result, the lovely fancy contract. It's about getting to that. And if you're able to engage in that process, then not only as a lawyer will we gather valuable information, but the company itself will do that. And they'll learn things that will help them create new products, preferences, ideas for their customers and their teams. And that will help them grow their business. In every case, from my part, it helps to create a nice dynamic relationship between legal, us, and the clients that we service. Next slide, please, Claire. So, is it a buzzword or is it here to stay? Claire touched upon this, and I would say legal design is relatively new. We've been talking about it for a few years now, but I think the practice of it is still quite new. But other services have been leveraging the designer's mindset for years, and they've done it successfully. It's already transformed most other services, and I think the legal ecosystem is next. Why should user experience, customer experience, client experience, why should that stop when legal issues start? I think it's a really exciting thing, and really happy to look towards the future and what's more to come on this. As I said, that's a very quick whirlwind tour of legal design from my part. Stefania will go into some more of the detail later, but I'm really looking forward to the discussion after that and where we can kind of dive into some really good examples.
Thanks, Natalie. And yeah, a reminder there of why it is that I got so excited by it in the first place, because Natalie explains it so well. So let's move over now to Stefania, and Stefania can give a little bit more of an introduction into who she is and what she does, and
right. So
on the theme of design.
So let's start saying that I'm a person who likes to wear many hats, and that has been one of the constant things during the years. So at the moment, I am running my own one-woman consultancy, Passera Design, that is specialized in legal information design. So mostly contracts, policies, code of conduct, and these sort of things. And at the same time, and this leads us to what I would like to share with you today. I have been working with World Commerce and Contracting, which is a worldwide association for commercial and contract management, as their contract designer in residence. So what I am doing with them is basically to create resources, talking to people, have workshops, support their corporate members to explore and start and support their journey in better contract design. So today I'm going to talk about better contract design. Last year, we have decided to launch a certified mark for contracts that exceed the, let's say, the status quo in being clear and user-friendly and inclusive, and not only good for the users, but being good for business. And of course, when you launch a certified mark or a certification, we wanted to do that because we want to celebrate the innovators in this field, and at the same time, we want to generate a fear of missing out. And we want people to up the bar in what they consider a good contract in their operations. So to have this mark, we had to develop an evaluation scheme in order to be rigorous and fair in what we are doing. And we have 13 criteria on what make a contract better than the status quo. Today we only have 15 minutes, so we're not going to go through all 13 criteria. We're going to focus on understanding the 4 key aspects of the better contract design framework. So this approach: relationship, usability, language, and design. So let's have a very quick dive and let's dip our feet into it. Let's start from relationship. So contracts are not pieces of paper. Contracts are not just a mere exercise in compliance. When you have a contract, a commercial contract especially, you want to create an engagement. You want to create a business relationship. So the relationship aspect in this framework is, in a good contract, is all about finding the right tone of voice and the good audience fit, a good approach to sustain not only that single transaction, but the relationship you want to create with the counterparty. So, for example, you can be authoritative in your contracts without losing legality and without being authoritarian. And I think this is brings us back to what Claire was saying before, is about listening and empathizing. So walk in the shoe of your readers, of your counterparty, of the non-lawyers who are there. Like, how would you like to be talked to? So how do your contracts look from the outside looking in? Do you sound like a bully? Do you sound like a company who's really striving to make it win-win? So this is really a reality check. And when we are trying to nurture the relational aspect in a contract, we want to think of both content and style. So what you say and how you're saying, because we want to foster trust and respect and collaboration and goodwill and win-win results. So it's not only what we're going to do, but the whole mental framing and the mental model that we manage to engender through our communication and our interaction. We need to recognize that one size does not fit all. So the contract that we are using with a mega corporation is most likely not balanced and not appropriate if we're using the same contract to hire a freelancer. We want to be relevant, so we don't want to hit our counterparty with every possible clause, every, like, belt and braces approach. We want to tailor the content for that specific user, for that specific business transaction. So something that irks me, something that really grinds my gear, is when you find, even a master agreement, and you find stuff about services and goods, even if the counterparty most definitely provides only one of these. You're forcing people to read irrelevant stuff. And the problem when you're providing people irrelevant stuff is not only that you waste their time, but since you're giving this information, you are actually risking to induce mistakes. Because when we read something, we always have this little voice in our mind that says, okay, why I was given this information? There must be a reason. And sometimes when there's not a reason, you start thinking of all the possible wrong reasons and making the wrong inferences. Something very important in the relationship is also about focusing on problem solving and not punishment. So trying to reframe our clauses. So it's like, okay, this thing happened. What is the remedy? What is the resolution? How do we go forward? And not like, oh, we're gonna, you have to pay us $1 bazillion and you're a bad person. So it's very much about taking a step out and listen to how you're talking. Number 2, usability. Usability is all about making users' tasks, and this is designerly speak, sorry, as easy as possible. To put it in a simpler way, it means that it's not enough to put the right words on paper, the right information in a document. You want to put it in a way that supports people in understanding what they need to do and in actually doing it. So you need to think about what the people who are supposed to read this document, whoever they are, usually there are many different groups, it's not only the lawyers. So in what context are they when they read this information, and why they read this information, and what actions they need to be able to do after they have read this. So it's going to be very different how a lawyer during negotiations read a contract from how a project manager reads a certain clause post-signature, and why they read. And we need to accommodate this variety of perspectives. It's really important. This is what my good friend Helena Hapio likes to say, and I think she's spot on. Contracts don't make things happen, people do. So that's why we have to support the readers, whoever they are. And here are my tips. As I said, like I'm making it very, very simple today, but I would say the tip number one is that just acknowledge that busy people don't read. They skim read at best. Maybe lawyers read, but you know, most people skim read. So it's good practice to try to make it easy to search and find information at a glance, because that is like, even before knowing what people are going to use that information for, that is the first concrete action that your users are going to do. They're going to search, they're going to read, they're going to skim. So they're going to search for information, identify what they need. And we have to help them to do that correctly and fast and without wasting their time. Number two, once you find the information they need, there's still the risk that they're not going to understand what it means and make mistakes. So let's make it easy to act upon information correctly. For example, if you want people to send a notice or to contact someone, give clear points of contact and put an email rather than a fax. This is a very simple example. You want to give a deadline, give a very clear deadline. Be very specific about what you mean with things like, okay, acceptance of deliverable, okay, who, what, where, and why, like how do you define that? Do that exercise, that empathy exercise, and try to preemptively clarify what you expect are going to be the possible sources of confusion. You can do that with exemplars, by opening up technical terms, by explanatory visuals. So diagrams, flowcharts, timelines are very useful to give the explanation of how something works to people and prevent mistakes. And in general, don't give general abstract rules about the maximum principles, maximum systems. Try to really focus on like, you need to do this. And I'm like, it would be recommended that you act like this, because that's not really an action-oriented way to communicate. And acknowledge that people look for storylines that match their expectations. And even when they're not reading a story, they try to search for relevant content and a structure, a storyline, I like to call it, that makes sense for them. So for example, if you're designing terms for consumers, tell them the estimated reading time. We know from research that motivates people not to close the terms. Give them a filtering mechanism. So this startup Shrap has two types of accounts. Don't mix all the information together. Tell them, okay, if you have a personal account, click here and just read the stuff that you're interested in. Put all the practical terms up front. Through this menu, actually, the users can choose what read and in what order rather than having that wall of text effect. So once again, it gives them a positive sense of control rather than just being hit with all the information. And I know that many lawyers are going to tell you that headings are for convenience only, but our brain tends to disagree with that. If you talk with anyone, any psychologist or communication scholar who studies how people actually read, headings are really the handle to make use and to grasp, literally, almost literally grasp the content. So use as many headings and subheadings as possible, because that's a tool for wayfinding. Right, I'll move on. I almost use all my time. So plain language, good language, simple language. I'm sure you have heard about this. And this is one of the ways in which you make the documents appropriate and clear and usable to stakeholders. Research from World CC has revealed that 90% of business people, so our members, find contracts hard and very hard to read. And if you go out of the organizations, we are not much better. There's a PIAAC study a few years back, and it's actually worryingly surprising how few people are actually completely confident in dealing with the highly complex documents, for example, like social benefits form and tax forms. In USA and Europe is around 10%, and in some countries like Mexico is 2% of people. And some people are in some countries, there's still quite a big slice of people that struggle to make sense and make use of information, of even the simplest information. So you can imagine people make a lot of misunderstanding. So I'm gonna skip to this, but it's very much aligned with what Natalie was saying before, like know your audience, test with your audience, talk to them, listen to them. Don't have assumptions about what they understand and what not. And if you're in a you may be in a legal profession, but you're in the communication profession too. So make sure that you know what plain language is and what the principles are and how to make use of it. Last but not least, design. Design is not decoration. Graphic design is just one aspect of design, but it's not the start or the end of it. Design is anything that improves usability and understandability. Visual communication, yes, it's about making information visible, findable, well-structured, and more engaging, but it's really not about pretty pictures. Good design requires information architecture. So how do you put things, layout and typography. So where do you put things and how do you deal with letters and space and the sort of variables, create visual explainers that are clear, aligning with brand, aligning with the overall user experience, and so on. There's another example. This is not from my work, is from Rob Waller, who's a very, very excellent information designer who has helped Shell redesigning their marine lubricant TNC for sales. And you can see, if you read the content, yeah, it's quite clear to me, but it's not like full plain language, but you can see like the general impression of clarity that this gives, because the layout is well structured. You know where to find things. The font size is legible. It's not like these tiny fonts that no one can see, and headings are skimmable and they actually correctly label what they're supposed to label. And when there are more practical actions, then yes, we are using visual explanations for that. So these graphics are well executed and they're informative. They're used when there's something to explain. You just don't put a million of icons because it's cool. You use it where it makes sense to explain something that may be tricky. So use design to create visual hierarchies and to break down the wall of text. Use design to make, let's say, a visual disposition of your information that is consistent and predictable and fluent to be read through. And don't limit your toolbox really to just words, because here the question should be communication and not word or icons or pictures, or it can really be whatever. That's why correctly Natalie was saying, keep an open mind. I have some projects where the clients themselves, or just the context, say like reveals that, okay, maybe here we don't really need any visual explainer. Right. If you want to up your game, this was really, really quick presentation about something that is complex. I mean, at World CC, together with World CC, we are doing workshops and training on these things from 2 hours to 12 hours if you really want to drill down and learn all those aspects and techniques and do exercises. If some of you happen to be a member, we're going to have a better contract design workshop on our community day at the end of March. Here, I'm leaving some links with you. And we're doing also bespoke workshops. And I really encourage you, if you're already there, if your company or your clients are already exceeding the bar of what their contracts are, send us your contract, apply for the mark, because we really want to recognize and celebrate everyone who's rocking the boat out there. And we want to help you and boost you in what you're doing. So Natalie, send us some of your stuff for the mark. And I'm sure someone else in the audience may have some good entries. We would love to see them and certify you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's a whistle-stop tour from all of us today, but hopefully we're giving you lots of tips that you can be thinking about. I want to share some reflections because I, again, reminded why I love design thinking and how it applies to what I do. And I want to come back to that creative exercise that I left you with earlier on. So I think the things that I've taken away from both Natalie and Stefania is this idea of collaboration. I think Natalie started by saying designers don't work alone. And I think, you know, I'm a magpie. I've also someone, Stefania, who's had many hats, started life as a solicitor, but as far removed from that now, perhaps as I could be. And this idea of bringing in different thoughts and different disciplines, I think, is one that benefits, you know, every industry. And I think it's perhaps one of the things that, you know, certainly legal, which is where I started my career, has been something that's been quite slow to adopt, quite slow to bring in, you know, other experts and see them as equal and see where they can steal bits and you know, use it to make them better. So you know, as I said, it reminded me as why it is that I love design thinking. What I want to do now, we've got just shy of 15 minutes for Q&A. I can see there are already some questions coming through, so we'll pick some of those up. What I'm going to do in parallel is I'm going to give you this exercise, and if people are working on the exercise, you can be putting your thoughts into the chat, or you might take it away and do it when you get home. So I asked you to pick an object, and I ask you to write down 5 characteristics of the object. And I also asked you to think about a challenge that your firm might have. So I picked this object, and one of the characteristics that I had for mine was that it moves in different directions. So it's one of the things, you push the button and it moves around. And I thought about one of the challenges that I'm obviously or often asked to help with. And it goes to that collaboration point, actually, and it's about getting different people in an organization working together, perhaps different teams or different individuals within a team. And the way that you can use this exercise to brainstorm is to take the characteristics that you've written down about the object, which have absolutely nothing to do with the challenge that you have, and use those to start your brainstorming process. So I mentioned there that my object moves. I mentioned that I was thinking about this as Natalie and Stefania were talking. I want to get different people who are in different directions. These things move in different directions, all the different pieces working together. And how can I join that together to come up with a solution? And what I thought was, this object has got a piece of string. It's what joins all of these different pieces together. So my thought was, you know, how can I find the string across the teams or across the people within the team that are going to bring them all together? So that was where I went with my thinking, based on the challenge that I had, the object, which is completely unrelated to the challenge, and the characteristic that I put down. So I'd invite you now to have a think about that exercise in the context of the challenge that you thought of. As I said, you can do it now, you can do it later, but it's an example of a way that design thinking can be used to push people outside of their comfort zone, to come up with ideas that are perhaps a little bit different from the norm. And when you're in a room filled with professionals who are perhaps, you know, reticent to come up with different ideas. Just by using something as simple as an object on your desk, you can come up with things that are slightly different, and you can give yourselves permission to play. You can give yourselves permission to fail, and that for me is what is so brilliant about design thinking. So I can see we've got loads of thoughts coming through, lots of people with different levels of expertise. I am going to pick up one of the thoughts that came through right from the beginning, and that was about legal design. So we'll use that example, and it's about how do you make sure contracts are fully inclusive and understandable to vulnerable customers, so perhaps people with dyslexia, visual impairment, language barriers, because they are a demographic who probably need perhaps more support than others in terms of understanding contracts. So either Natalie or Stefania, I don't know if you've got any thoughts about, perhaps you've done your empathy exercise, you've realised that the people reading it need an additional level of support.
Yeah, right. And my 2 cents on this would be that first you need to understand the context and who are these, for whom are these contracts. Of course, I could imagine that, I mean, I wouldn't discount that, but if we're working on a business to business complex agreement, is going to be a little bit different how we even conceptualize inclusivity and ease compared to a consumer contract that it's, you know, for utilities that can really be addressed to everyone, and so the bar is so much higher. I would say that nothing substitutes user research and user testing. If you want to design for these lead users, you need to involve them in the research you do and in the testing you do. And actually, if you're designing documents that work better with these people who have stronger needs, you're going to end up with something that works better, that is so much more robust in its design and usability for everyone else. Like, I've never met anyone complain, oh, this is too easy. Visual impairments, there are different tests, for example, from the WACG standard that you can use. You can ensure that the contrast ratio is above what they suggest. You can make sure that you use certain color combinations that are visible for people with different types of color blindness. Language barrier, yeah, that's just a starting point, but you can start aiming. You can use at least some readability score to get going and seeing that the reading rate is as low as possible. And then you have to do, if you really want to be sure that people understand, you test with these people and give them comprehension tasks and see if they can find it, can understand it, and they can play it back to you and memorize it. So user testing is really crucial if you want to be serious about including people and giving them a voice.
And I think that applies, you know, broader than that. And you know, I can see people saying test, test, test in the chat there. And I think that's one of the things. And you know, we're talking a lot about legal design, and I am conscious that there are people from different disciplines in the room. But you know, one of the things with testing is often as a lawyer, you will produce something, give it, and off you go. But I know Natalie and I have had lots of conversations around compliance. If you're producing policies for people in your organisation and you send the policy, have you actually bothered to go to the people that need to read, understand, and comply with that policy to make sure that they understand it, that it works? Natalie's nodding. I'll bring Natalie in.
It reminds me, we're doing a job actually currently with a client, and their issue is between legal and product teams. And as in-house counsel, I've had this issue before where legal are just being hammered for questions by the product teams on what legal consider like sort of silly questions, like they should know this already. We've given them a user guide, a policy document, right? Just read it. And when they sent this over to me as a project that we're looking to work with them on, and I read through the document, I honestly couldn't find the difference between the legal terms that they had to fill in the blanks on and the policy sort of guidance document that the legal team had created for them. It made no sense to me as a lawyer, let alone the product teams who are not legal at all. So sometimes it's just about, you know, your users are different people within your own industry, within your own sort of wider teams, and it's turning something into what they will find useful. And we'll only know that, to Stefania's point, by speaking to them, by trying to find out what the issues are for them. by digging into the detail. And then when we turn it around and we get to the point where we found something, we test it and we see if it works. And you know, it applies to everything outside of contracts, simple kind of user guides to everything really.
Thank you. Got lots of questions coming in. I apologize, I'm not going to be able to pick up all of these questions, but if there are any specific ones, feel free to contact us afterwards. I'm going to pick up this one, and it is from Michelle, who says, hi, I'm a Brazilian researcher of legal design. She's still at university. What do you think is the most important point to remember about legal design? So what's the one thing, and I think that's a great kind of ending question, what's the one thing that you want people to take away from the course today, or the session today, I should say?
I think for me, it's the blank page aspect. You know, don't come with like a preconceived idea of how you're going to solve a problem. You know, have your blank page out there, your Google Sheet, whatever it is that you use, and just come ready to listen. And then I think everything flows from that. So I think it's the blank page principle for me.
Thank you. Stefania, I'm going to ask you the same
I
question.
would go meta on that. So don't even take design thinking and legal design as a silver bullet. I think that a lot of people like this sort of toolkits because exactly for their toolkit effect, that they think like, oh, there is a recipe. I just pray to the god of legal design or design thinking, and I follow the recipe and I'm gonna get the results. But if you do it in such a pedestrian way, there's no, I mean, like a model is a model. A model is not real life. So I think that the curiosity and asking questions and always being very attentive to like, what are my assumptions? What are the assumptions that the person I'm talking to might have? How do we get to a better place to start? Even framing what the problem is really important. So I wouldn't say that it's a gimmick, but there is a very wide range of how you can use design thinking, and as with everything, take it as a tool for thinking, and don't be naive about that. Just keep on asking questions. Ask the stupid questions. That's what designers do. That's the truer thing that designers do.
Fantastic. And I think actually a real parallel there, because you have to ask the questions and you also have to listen to the answers. So that
exactly.
So
exactly.
and for me, that's my definite takeaway about all of this, which is remember who we're doing this for. There was a question there in terms of you might have people with different levels of knowledge. Well, recognize that. Make sure that if we're talking about the world of contracts, that you don't forget who's reading the document. And for me, we started this session thinking about how can design thinking be used for professional services firms. And I suggested that it was a way to get creative and then it was a way to innovate. But actually, for me, the most powerful thing about design thinking is it's a way to collaborate, which I think is really important. But what it forces us to do at every turn is to remember who we're doing things for. So I think so often we can get caught up in negotiations, whether it's a contract negotiation, whether it's providing advice through the lens of an accountancy practice, and we forget why we're doing it in the first place and who we're doing it for. And the best place to get answers is for the person that we're doing it for. So that testing, that going back, that asking, can someone understand it? Ask the person, can you understand it? And if they can't, go back and try again. And that for me is really the key message that I take from design thinking, and hopefully the message that I've shared with you today in what has been a very quick journey through design thinking. Thank you so much to Natalie and to Stefania. I absolutely love speaking to both of you always, and I'm so pleased that you could give some time today. To everyone who's joined, we will be sharing the recording. We will be sharing slides with everyone. Are you, Natalie and Stefania, both happy for emails to be shared if people have got specific questions?
Yep.
Yes, email and LinkedIn, you can find.
Fantastic.
So if you've got there.
Brilliant. Any questions, then feel free to pick it up. But otherwise, thank you to everyone for joining us, and hopefully you enjoyed the session today.